Welcome, Art Base supporters. My name is Lissa Ballinger, and I'm here today with Vallee Noone and her exhibition entitled The Balance, which will be on view starting this Friday, September 3rd. We have our opening from 5 to 7, and this extraordinary exhibition will be on view until October 2nd. So this is absolutely an exhibition that you have to come see in person and experience and walk around. And that's part of the goal of Vallee's exhibition. Our hours, we're in our new location, which hopefully you all have already visited, at 174 Midland Avenue. And our hours at the Art Base through September, through this exhibition, are 11 to 5, Tuesday through Saturday. And I also want to thank both Casey Concrete and Double Diamond for sponsoring this unique exhibition. So welcome, Vallee. Thank you so much for being with us and for putting up this extraordinary exhibition.
Thank you. It's been so much fun, and it's such an honor to be able to do it and have the space and the time. So thank you.
So just briefly tell the viewers what they're going to see when they come to this exhibition.
So when you walk in, you'll see a series of hanging blocks that are arranged throughout the room in little vignettes, and they have on them, or each is hung individually, and they hold each other together. So there's kind of a balance in that, and that's the title of the piece. And then on top of them are a bunch of slinkies that I've painted to be kind of a pastel-y palette. And yeah, throughout, and so the idea is that people are able to move around. As you can see, they're hung pretty high so that people can go under them, around them. I really want people to be able to see them from all angles, because that's one of the wonderful things about slinkies is as you move around them, you see different arrangements of lines and shapes. And so yeah, that's essentially the piece. In the center of the piece, I do have a pair of scissors that is there as like a memento mori piece, an idea to just, reference the end of the piece, that while it's all hung right now in such precise balance, that soon those scissors will start cutting it down, and then this piece will move into its next iteration in the world. Don't know what it is yet, but.
Not yet. So tell us, first of all, when Vallee's exhibition was accepted by our exhibitions committee, it was well over a year ago. And as we were talking about earlier, the whole world was different. And so can you talk about what you actually first proposed and where you came to with this exhibition from that?
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how much it's changed from its original concept. When I first proposed it in, was that fall of 2019?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, feels like a lifetime ago. It was going to be a much closer in piece with a series of walls and hallways that would have film of tissue paper throughout that the viewer would be encouraged to break the tissue paper and kind of dig through the piece and grow the piece as they experience it. That requires people being very close in together.
Mm-hmm. Close spaces,
all of that.
Yeah.
And what seemed completely normal and accessible in the fall of 2019, last summer, felt just like a world away. And so I started reconceiving of it and thinking, okay, how do I get this to work in a more minimalist way?
In a COVID world.
In a COVID world, yeah. And the first thought I had was, I really, with all of my art making, I really just go with my gut. I follow the muses or the creative spirit or whatever it is. First, I just follow my gut and kind of watch the artistic process happen, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm almost at a bit of a remove from it. And so the first image that popped into my head were these blocks hanging in circles with slinkies sitting on them in the same circle, with the idea that they would be white on the outside and colored on the inside, and then throughout the time, there would be scissors there, and throughout the time the piece was up, that I would cut it or people would cut it, and then the slinkies would evolve along with it, with the idea being that I wanted to have more of an engagement with the artwork. One of the things that really drives me crazy about art consumption is that it's very passive, and that people just walk through. I mean, we've all been in museums where people are booking it through the galleries, taking quick photos of the famous ones, and then, you know, considering.
Unconscious.
Yeah, and
In some way.
Totally, and the most valuable art experiences I've had, the most fun I've had with pieces of art is when you stand in front of them or in them for a long time, and after a while notice some beautiful surprise. Like I was standing in front of a Pissarro once for a long time, and then found one of his hairs in the painting. And
you hope it's his hair.
Yeah, right, totally. Someone's hair. It was definitely his. Or standing in front of a William Wiley once for a long time, and suddenly seeing a 2-foot sea captain standing right in front of me, and I hadn't seen him. And if I had just blown through, I wouldn't have. And so I try in my art to create spaces where there is time and where there is more interaction than just the passive viewing. But then when I started creating this piece, I was really struck by how the wood worked together. It was kind of a physics lesson for me. If you hold one of the blocks, it'll spin just forever. But if you take one of its partners and put it together, it settles them, and it creates this quiet and this calm that I found really beautiful, that I was not necessarily anticipating, because with the conception of the piece, it was more about the slinkies and about their path through time and people engaging with it. And then it just started to not feel like what the piece needed. It was wrong. And so I started to use the slinkies in a more of a permanent way, as that they're frozen in their space and frozen in their term, but of course not permanent, but more.
Right.
And so, yeah, so then my conception of the scissors changed, not any longer wanting people to interact in that way.
But there is an interaction,
right?
Necessarily just by walking in and seeing the scissors there,
right? In
anticipation of the sensation that you could possibly
absolutely
destroy the balance.
Absolutely.
So it's not actually physical, but it's a
great. Yes, that's exactly what I was hoping for. Is that that moment of, am I supposed to?
Yeah.
Like, is this?
And we'll see if anyone.
And if they do, great.
That's great.
I do feel like once an artist releases their art into the world, it no longer belongs to them, and it's part of the human experience after that point. And if somebody writes a country song and you cry about it, it's not because of their breakup. You don't care about. You've never met this.
Country singer.
You've never met them. It doesn't matter to you what the artist was thinking. It's your experience of the piece that is the important part, and that's why we love art, and that's why we experience art, is the experience of it and the relationship, the personal relationship that everyone has with any piece around. So
well, talk about how, do you consider yourself an installation artist? Is that how you, if you're going to define yourself, or mixed media, or, I also should say that Vallee has 6 drawings that accompany the show that are, sort of maquettes for this actual exhibition. I would say they're sort of drawings towards this exhibition.
Yeah.
How do you do you define yourself? I've clearly, within the Vallee, you've done several other site-specific experiential installations, but sort of speak to that as that type of artist.
Yeah. I love installation work. It is my favorite to do.
It is not easy. It is
it does take a long time.
Yeah. And each time you're reinventing yourself, right? It's
and exploring and figuring it out. I've never done much woodwork before, and all of a sudden I'm.
Here you are.
Yeah, and with each block, took just a quick aside. Each block took about 15 minutes to sand. and then the painting and the hanging and all that. So there's probably about 20 minutes of work just in the construction of each block, which took So, but I do love installation work. It is my favorite. I was saying to Brian Colley on KD&K yesterday that I feel like I'm a goldfish sometimes. Like if I'm in my tiny studio, I do my little tiny paper cuts. I'm a paper cut artist too. But if I'm given a big space and time, I'll just fill out into it.
And that's one of the first things you said to me, especially when we were moving from our old space to our new space, is you will take over whatever space you're given, which I loved. Many artists are intimidated by a change of space, et cetera, and you were just sort of like, great, I'll just take up that space, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, it's fun too because it's an element of the piece. It's a crucial element of the piece. Like when you're creating the rest of the work, all the elements to it. You're in your studio. You're creating just stacks of things, and then the space is what gives it life. The space is what creates it. The space is what makes it a piece. And so give me a bigger canvas. That's great.
Vallee was one of the first people who actually saw our new space, 174, when it was still under construction, just to be able to visualize what was going to come next in this exhibition.
And it's an amazing space.
I know, we're so lucky.
Such a good job.
This is our first installation piece in this exhibition, or in this space, actually. So this is exciting for us to be able to see. And it's nice to be able to see also the drawings, I'm assuming, came before at the same time or after?
So I do a lot of processing with drawing. I love drawing. And so when I'm just kind of working through concepts, I'll draw, and so the pieces, the few of them have in blue the movement that the blocks make, and then in black the movement that the blocks actually have. And so I was just really fascinated with that movement, and just it's like moving into a new house. Before you move into a house, you have all these ideas of where you're gonna
great metaphor,
put the TV and put the bookshelf and all of this, and then you get in and you're like, oh, this is
totally different.
Yeah, and so that's a lot of what installation is dreaming for 18 months and then getting in and being like, oh, okay, well, we're
different.
This is different. And so
Is this sort of how you visualized it when you were thinking about it? No.
No.
Really? Why?
No.
How?
Well, I mean, it just keeps evolving. As I said, I really do follow the work and listen to it as it's evolving. So when I told you about the new idea with the blocks and the slinkies, I was thinking much more circular and the slinkies not open. And then as I was working with this piece, it was just really bothering me. It was keeping me up at night. I was just having, nightmares about it just completely falling flat and not working. And at one point, I almost scrapped the slinkies. And then one of your colleagues was like, well, let's just let's
give it a try.
Just take a breath.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he did because they are important to the piece. They are, but there's some, there are points where it's like, okay, it's not going to be what I thought.
Right.
And there's
that letting go, I'm sure, is a huge part of the process, and allowing, like you said, to follow the work and see what it actually wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't want to force it, because then it'll feel forced.
So Vallee, actually, one wonderful thing is that Vallee grew up in the Valley.
You are the first one to make that joke.
I did not mean to do that. The Roaring Fork Valley. And so I would love to hear, and I'm sure our listeners would love to hear, your progression of how you became an artist, how this evolved.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Glenwood. Mostly went to Carbondale schools. I went to CRMS. And my mother is a local landscape painter, Vallee Noone. And actually I'm fourth generation artist. My great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother.
That's awesome.
It's
what an
fun.
incredible lineage.
It's pretty neat. I have a bunch of their paintings. They were all painters. And painting just never really worked for me. I like drawing, I like paper cutting, I like installations, but painting never really worked. But I always did it because, you know, my mom's a plein air painter, and so we were always out, you know, in this beautiful valley. Yeah, with canvases, and, you know, we'd paint rocks, or we'd go do forts, or we'd paint canvases or whatever. So it was just around. Art supplies were always out in our house. And yeah, I just feel really lucky that I was able to go all the way through school and never have a teacher be like, you can't do that, you know? Because I feel like so many people, you know, creativity is so inherent to humanity. Like, we are creative beings. It's one of the things that we point to differentiate ourselves from the rest of the animal world. And so it's like in our bones, we are creative creatures, but so many people will say, I'm not creative. And it's
or we teach ourselves not to be creative,
exactly.
not to listen to that voice, yeah.
Yeah, and we listen when, you know, when people say like, oh, I don't like it. And it's like, well, there's, you know.
Yeah, there's so much fear involved, especially, I mean, it's a huge risk to put something up on display. And I mean, I always think artists are so brave, you know, it's so much of you coming out, whether you realize it or not, how your own uniqueness.
Yeah. Well, and it's so fun to stand in your creation. Like, there's nothing really more fun than that. Yeah.
So going back to your education, did you ever take like formal art classes or?
Yeah, so I, more in college. I wasn't so into it in high school. I, you know, dabbled, and I think when it was taken away, when I was not around my mom all the time, when it was just like there. And I remember being in my dorm room freshman year of college and like wanting to just doodle and realizing that I didn't have like markers and stuff. Yeah. And that, excuse me. And that was just such a revelation. Like, oh, I have to like do this. Like, it's not just going to be here. And so I started, you know, doing that and taking classes. And then after college, I went and studied in Florence under this wonderful artist, Lorenzo Patanti, who is kind of a modern artist. And he really gave me the wings to just go and do kind of weird stuff. So I did a project where my thesis was, it was called Break More Cameras. This was in 2009 when there were more cameras than smartphones. And every day I'd walk from my apartment to my school in the heart of Florence, and it was just tourists everywhere, just throngs, and all of them were looking through their cameras the whole time. Yeah, so long story short, I created a bunch of cardboard fake cameras and would spend like a couple hours doing either a full painting on the inside or poems or dioramas or whatever, and then seal it up entirely so you couldn't open it. And then you could just see through the camera hole that there was something in it, and they all had something to shake. And then I went out with some friends on a very busy day in the middle of the, like right at the bottom of the Duomo, and just started walking up to people and pretending to take pictures with the fake cameras. And then as soon as they saw me, I'd hand it to them and walk away. And then that was the end of it. So like, I don't know what happened to them after that, like if anybody broke any of them. But that was like that was a really fun piece to do. Talk
about engagement of the viewer and turning their experience upside down.
Yeah, and making them work for it. You know, like if anybody broke those cameras, then you know, they had little treasures inside, or they could just stay their objects. So that was great, and then well, I guess I'm going out of order. So in college, I did more, like a lot of string installations. Because college is great for that, because you have the studio space and the time
and the resources
and the critiques, and it's so wonderful. And so I did a lot of installations then, and then and then I just was, you know, doing stuff, and the painting just, as I said, never clicked and really made me mad a lot of the times. Like
it wasn't your medium.
It wasn't at all. I really disliked painting, but I always did it because I had this feeling that I needed to like create images and create works. And it was so frustrating. And so I just pretty much stopped doing art and was working, and one day came home and there was an old drawing that I had and a box cutter, and I just started cutting away, and it was like, oh my gosh, there it is. Like,
so interesting.
That was the
your eureka moment with
yeah,
the box cutter.
yeah. And the next day I bought an X-Acto knife, and 6 months later I quit my job and started doing art all the time.
Wow.
And it was like, oh, there we are.
But we don't have any paper
No
cuts
paper
here.
cuts. Well, actually, one of the drawings, the paper that it was on was like had gotten
You
smudged.
can't help yourself.
Right. Well, I'd smudged the drawing from just creating the piece, and I wanted it to be on a white, so I paper cut that out and glued it on. So there's one
That's funny.
hidden paper cut.
Can't help yourself.
But yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Vallee. Is there anything else you want the viewers to know before they experience this on their own?
Just just to trust your gut on art. You know, that if you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it, and just believe.
And always go see, right? Experience for yourself.
Yeah, go see and experience it and trust yourself.
So while we're so happy that you're watching this video today, really you have to come and see it in person. It is such an extraordinary experience to walk through, and the light has such an impact on it. And the interaction of the blocks is something that I was not predicting at all, which I really love, that tension between the blocks. So again, thank you so much, Vallee. This is such a wonderful experience, and please come visit us. Our hours again at 174 Midland Avenue are Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 5 p.m. Thank you.